Hello and welcome to the 37th edition of the Jaguar Report podcast. Is it 37, John? Check me real quick.
Yeah, it is 37,
It's
man.
37. It's like three guesses right in a row.
We're new digs this time too. We're coming live from StreamYard. This is our guest and I joined a new podcast network, the Fans First Sports Network. A ton of old podcasts from like SB Nation and Vox, etc. But we're now on StreamYard, so no more 30-minute Zoom with us patchworking episodes together. At least not for now.
Friend. They'll still be patchworked in different ways, but yeah, we're on StreamYard now, so that's pretty cool. And now I'm in the I was gonna say big leagues, but really just full time now. If you don't have Twitter and don't follow us, then I am happy to share that I'm the new site manager over at Big Cat Country. Alfie Crow, the longtime manager, is going to be stepping into some kind of retiree role where he writes 2 opinion pieces a week. And I'm stepping in full time. And so we're going to make this podcast full time. Eventually, it'll be looking really nice and not just kind of put together at the last second. But yeah, I'm excited.
My ideal scenario is he acts like you're Tom Coughlin and you're his Dave Caldwell. He just rules with an iron fist.
Who's he?
He's Tom Coughlin. He's their retiree who is an advisory role. He's calling the shots. We all know the deal.
Okay.
We all know the deal. But no, congratulations, obviously, to Gus. I mean, Alfie is, like a Jaguars, online legend. Like they wouldn't be like Jaguars websites without Alfie Crow. I firmly believe I wouldn't have a Jaguars website without Alfie. But Gus, I know you're absolutely going to crush it. I don't appreciate the higher standards that you're setting for this podcast, and
I'll
for myself. But
I'll do the work.
That's what I'm for. Fair enough. But hey, we got a lot to talk about, man. It's almost draft time.
We got a lot to talk about. The Jags kicked off with their voluntary offseason workout program on Monday. And so, again, voluntary, so not every veteran reported. One of the veterans that didn't report is tight end Evan Ingram because he has not signed the franchise tag yet. The team has until July 27th to sign him to a long-term extension instead of him having the tag. But until he signs a contract, he's not going to be on the field. After Monday, we had some press conferences this week. Wednesday, we had a few players talk, Foye Oluokun, Trevor Lawrence, and Calvin Ridley. John, talk to me about the impression Calvin Ridley gave to you and the rest of the media and pretty much all of Jacksonville on Wednesday.
Yeah, no, I've been to a lot of press conferences in that room since I started covering the team in 2019, and I've been to a lot of bizarre ones, and I've been to a lot of introductory ones, like first impressions.
Right.
Calvin Ridley probably had like the best like first impression in terms of press conference. Like I've said, now I'm even going back to, this is obviously nothing against anybody, but even when Trevor got drafted, like Calvin Ridley, I mean, he's just electric personality. It seemed like he's, obviously he's completely, faced the mistakes that he made in the last year or so in that Players Tribune article. But, it seemed like he has the right perspective on it. I mean, he made some good points. Like for a wide receiver, why isn't, this time off, especially for a guy he was injured a lot at the end of his tenure in Atlanta. So for a guy who was injured and probably needed some time for his body away from football, like it's not a position where I think at all, like you should see like a physical drop off. And from, all reports that he's electric, a great athlete on the field. His workouts have been good. Obviously, they're not going through the offense yet. The early stages of voluntary offseason workouts are literally just like lifting and conditioning and stuff like that. But all indications are that, he's going to be that dude. And he had, I had somebody reply to me because I wrote about how good the press conference was, and somebody was like, "It was run-of-the-mill stuff." I'm like, no, I can show you a run-of-the-mill. Let's go watch some Joe Schobert press conferences, and I'll show you a run-of-the-mill press conference. But that was no run-of-the-mill.
Excuse me, feeling a little under the weather. I forgot to add that.
I felt so.
Excuse out there in the middle or in the beginning. Jeez.
My last little Joe Schobert tidbit is he's a soldier for the 2020 season because it was the COVID year. Players could really duck the media. Like a couple of players had to talk each week on Zoom, but nobody's going to like put them in front of a camera and say, okay, you have to talk. And Joe Sherbert, we talked to him, I felt like pretty much every week that season. He was like the only guy who was like, I'll do it.
Yeah, when you said I've been in a lot of press conferences in that room, there was definitely some sadness in your tone. Like, oh man, it's been a lot.
There's been some press conferences in that room, man.
I agree with you, Rhea Ridley. Like, I feel like word since the trade happened is that he's not just healthy, but in great shape. Yeah. And that's just been kind of continuing to be the word ever since. And he said one of his just his best quote from the press conference was turning to someone in the media and saying, I'm a 1,400-yard receiver with a broken foot. So just kind of declaring himself he is that guy.
What are your expectations for him? Say he stays healthy for most of the seasons. 15 regular season games. Everybody has bumps and bruises now and then. Nobody's going to be like stay healthy all season. 15 games. What do you think he produces next year? Like, give me a number that I can hold above your head.
Well, John, you say hot takes matter on this show.
So of course they matter.
One of my hot takes a couple of weeks ago was that Ridley would finish top 10 among all receivers in yards. I think the take was. I mean, I can't say I wrote it down. So
I like it.
That's a hot take, though. In terms of realistic numbers, 1,600 or 1,700 yards and double-digit touchdowns.
Yeah. People would – no, you'd have to re-sign him to a big deal after that, right?
I mean, yeah. I would hope so. I'd hope that's like what they're hoping and expecting too. What are you thinking? I didn't even think that was a high of a number. I could have gone higher.
No. Honestly, I think like in terms of if this like works out, literally the only thing that would keep me hesitant is there are so many mouths to feed in the offense, and their number one, it seems like, changes weekly. Like based like one on who they're playing, and two who it seems like Trevor's really clicking with that day. Like it feels like some games is just okay. This is Trevor's guy for the game. So I don't think he couldn't reach those numbers like to any fault of his own. It's just, I mean, Kirk's going to get his. Zay Jones is financially obligated to get some targets in there, and of course, Ingram. So. Yeah, I mean,
you're right.
I'd say that's a best case scenario. I like it. Like he would definitely be Pro Bowl, obviously type season, and he would deservedly like if they didn't re-sign him, which would be a mistake if he puts up those numbers, but he would at the very least get them a third round like comp pick because that's like Jawan Taylor money.
So I looked it up, and for context, last year Devontae Adams was third in the league with 1,500 receiving yards. So maybe I'll lessen my take a little bit this time and go with like 1,250, which would still be easily top 10. I think he like easily clears 1,000 yards though. I don't think.
Oh yeah. I
like we're not going to be like, oh, he only needs this many yards in week 16 to get to 1,000.
I think he'll have 1,000 yards by like week 12.
Yeah. So he's going to be good. We're in agreement there.
Yeah. Calvin Ridley is good at football. The only place you can find those kind of takes right here, baby.
Yeah, we just got to buy low before. We're smart. Trade for him in Dynasty. That's what I just did.
Yeah, I mean, it just like seems obvious that like for like the Jaguars, their entire like offseason, like it kind of hinges like on him and Trayvon Walker. Like him being the missing piece for the offense and Trayvon Walker taking the next step, so they don't look like. They screwed up the entire pass rush, which by nature, I think that guy's going to get fed the ball a lot. Like he's going to be a guy who I already know in training camp, he's going to have there's going to be a ton of big pieces on how well he's doing. He's going to be the number one Jaguar guy drafted. Probably, I mean, I don't follow fantasy close enough. I would guess ETN probably goes pretty high in fantasy, doesn't he?
Yeah. And everyone thinks I think people around Jacksonville kind of realize that he's not going to have like a bell cow role based on what the team's been doing this offseason, but I think a lot of, like national people are like, oh yeah, ETN's just the next big thing.
You don't think ETN's going to catch 60 passes next year?
One of my buddies yesterday was like, I love how ETN can like run and catch the ball and like how he's kind of dynamic in both areas. I was like, when does he catch balls?
Screen passes, baby. It's what he caught 35 passes. That's more than I thought. 35 passes last year. That's more than I thought. Yeah. So former wide receiver Travis Etienne.
That's right. Were there any other takeaways you had from the player press conferences on Wednesday? No, neither did I.
nah, nah. It like workouts have just started. They're going to talk about what their set expectations are. I guess the only other noteworthy thing was Fourier was asked about like Devin Lloyd and Chad Muma and Trayvon Walker getting better in their second years, and he literally was like, "They'll be better just because they'll know where to line up." And it kind of painted the picture of like they were really like throwing young guys into the fire last year, and you could tell early on, like that game against the Eagles had Trayvon Walker in hell in week 4. Like you could just tell, like their alignments, the option, everything they were throwing at him, it had him, his mind in a pretzel. And then Devin Lloyd, you could see Fourier having to line him up, during his rough stretch of the year. So I thought that was probably the most other interesting comment.
Yeah. I thought the most interesting thing was just the shirt that Fourier had on.
Bob Sutton inspired, baby.
Think takeaways.
Bob Sutton.
Do it against someone that's like not Zach Wilson or Davis Mills, and then we can talk about takeaway shirts.
The most wholesome moment I've seen in the Jaguars locker room is after they beat the Titans. Bob Sutton went and grabbed his like 10-year-old grandson and brought him into the locker room to meet Trevor. And the kid was just in awe. And I'm like, he really has no idea his grandpa's been doing this for like 80 years. Yeah. Trevor is obviously very cool to the kids. So, but Bob Sutton rules. He's a nice guy, and it's like that's literally like decades and decades and decades of linebacker experience. And I'll be honest, I don't even remember exactly how he ended up coming to Jacksonville, but
right.
It worked
out.
It
was 2 years ago. I don't think it was the last year move.
I think he came with the Urban Meyer crew.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And he stayed because he was the DC of the Chiefs when Doug was the OC there. Yeah.
Nice. All right, well, let's move on to the coach and GM presser that happened on Thursday. There was kind of 2 big nuggets, in my opinion. What did you say? There was 3 or 4, or just the 2 big ones?
I'd say it's probably. Let me hear what your nuggets are. Well, I want to hear your nuggets first, and then
all right. Well, let's get the biggest one out of the way, and then we can whittle down to the smaller nuggets.
It's a nugget off.
The big nugget that Balky dropped at his press conference was saying that the Jaguars, have 2 or 3 guys that they're hoping fall to 24, and that'll be there for the pick. Basically saying, I think doubling down on 2 or 3 guys specifically.
Yeah.
That. Essentially, that's like how big their list is for guys they really want at 24th overall.
Did you catch him and Mark Long when Mark Long followed up about it? He was like, 3 guys. He goes, it could be 4. He's like, no, you said 2. I mean,
and Balky tried to like laugh it off. He's like, okay, don't hold me to it.
Like,
just kept on powering through.
Like, I completely believe that. I mean, Balky even said like he's. Go back to. I want to say Balky's been, probably a part of over like 20 drafts in his scouting career at this point. Like, so when he says like, somebody asked him, I think it was Mark Long, like how do you know the board's going to fall a certain way to where somebody you like is going to be there? And he's like, I've been doing this long enough. Like, it kind of just, he has a feel for how it's going to go. And I honestly believe that because, I mean, some like tropes and stereotypes in drafts are kind of true year in and year out, In most cases, quarterbacks are going to get pushed up the board. You're going to see pass rushers go early. You're going to see a run on offensive lineman at some point. So I do think that they probably have a pretty good idea of whether or not those guys will be there. And I think he went to say, like, he feels like there's a good chance at least one of them will be there. So it wouldn't surprise me if, say, 2 of their 3 guys are not there. My guess on them was Nolan Smith, who most people have told me, no, he doesn't count. He's going to go too high. Maybe he does. Maybe he goes number 8 to the Falcons, but maybe he is a sub 240-pound pass rusher who never had more than a handful of sacks in the season, who also finished last year injured. Maybe that guy falls at 24. I know that'd be crazy, but maybe.
Crazy things have happened.
Exactly. And then I think Brian Branch is another one. I mean, that one thing that stuck out to me, Gus, was when he said, they have a good feeling that need is going to meet value at 24. And to me, that like screamed Brian Branch, that's about the value of, top end nickel, that part of the draft. it'd fill their biggest need. I loved how he directly said he wasn't going to say what their needs were.
That was in the beginning too. He's like, I'm not going to get into that.
yeah. Like the rest of the NFL was on pins and needles about whether the Jaguars need a pass rusher or a nickel cornerback more. But I think Branch would fit that what he was talking about, like the value and need thing to a T. And then as far as Torrance, again, I think value and need. They said Ben Barch probably won't even be ready for. They said he won't be ready for the starter training camp, but he's also ahead in terms of his recovery, which is kind of wild. He got hurt in week 5, so that's almost like a year-long recovery. And if he wasn't ahead in it, Jesus, how long would he be out? So the fact that he was already kind of an unknown when he got injured, I don't know if you can go into training camp with him and Shatley as your 2 guys at left guard. So I could see them taking Torrance there. They've shown interest in him. He would obviously fit the culture. He would help the running game a good bit. And I think you've seen enough insiders. Peter Schrager said it, but also Adam Kaplan said in Pro Football Network in his mock that the people he's been talking to are saying defensive back or offensive lineman there. I know when most people see offensive lineman, they assume tackle, but I really think it could easily be a guard.
Yeah, and Schrager said something pretty much the exact same thing. He said defensive back or offensive lineman, not offensive tackle. And not back is what he said. So
and in terms of offensive tackle, I really just think that there's going to be a run on guys. I don't think Darnell Wright's going to be there. So I think that the guys you'd be left with are Anton Harrison and Matthew Bergeron. But I also think Anton Harrison might be off the board. Tackles are going to go flying at some point. I think at least 5 will be taken in those first 23 picks.
Yeah, Anton Harrison has been in pretty much every single Buccaneers mock at 19, and a lot of their beat reporters are kind of pointing the finger that way too. And then I agree with you where seems like it would be a surprise if Wright gets to 24. But I agree with you all the way. As soon as Balky said 2 to 3 guys and he said where value meets need, my first 2 thoughts were Branch and Torrance.
Yeah.
Torrance had a combine meeting with him. There's a ton of Jaguars personnel at his pro day at Florida. Smitter recently said, the Jaguars have significant interest in taking him 24th overall. So I was just there. And then for Branch, Schrager had Branch going there. Matthew Freeman, who's just a guy who collects information and does it rather than he has insiders, but he's been the number 1 most accurate mock drafter. In his most recent mock, he had Branch going to the Jaguars. John, I don't really talk to you much about your inside information, but I do know that you've had Branch going to the Jaguars 4 different times this offseason in a pre-combine, free agency, something posted today. And then
paying the bills, baby.
Your other 7 are just full first-round mock.
Yeah,
something else. The things just keep stacking up for evidence of Branch being a fit for Jacksonville.
I wouldn't be mocking him there if I had heard the Jaguars were out on him. There was a reason. There's reasons. I mock certain players where, and Branch. I just he's somebody who they've shown interest in, and I don't think Nolan Smith will be there. I do think he'll ultimately get picked at some point before them, but I don't think it's impossible that he gets there because again, small guy, not a lot of production, was injured, he could fall, but I do think he probably gets taken before then. Branch, other than Baltimore and maybe Minnesota, I don't know, even Minnesota, I don't know who's taking him. Maybe New England, but that seems like
I was going to say New England too, but that's too early.
That seems and I think Branch is probably one of the 10 best players in the class. It's just I don't think the NFL is taking a small, slow safety, quote unquote, that early. He's a great football player. Derwin James went 16th or 17th, right?
Yeah.
No, these guys just don't go high. Other than Jamal Adams going weirdly high, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I was trying to think. Minka Fitzpatrick also went late.
He went the teens. Yeah, and Minka was a better prospect than Branch is. And Branch again, he's a good prospect. I think he 24 is probably smack dab where he should be taken in the draft line. Mm-hmm. I just like you had said, the first 2 names that came to mind were Torrance and Branch as well. And I saw Cam Wolf at Film Network said the same thing.
That's right. I was going to mention that too. So there you go. 3 guys 3 names. We're gonna get more into the draft. John did release like a 10-minute podcast today talking about prospects, but we're gonna get more to the draft next week.
That's right.
Conference talk because that's too exciting to pass.
That's right. Well, hey, give us 1 minute for here are our sponsors, and we'll be right back with you.
Welcome back to the Jaguar Report podcast. Okay, second big nugget, John, was Cam Robinson because you asked him, right, about the status of Cam
Robinson. I feel like we haven't heard a lot about Cam Robinson. Doug Peterson at the combine, like he was very vague about Cam Robinson's recovery, and I feel like we just haven't heard a lot about him, from them this offseason. So, it was a meniscus injury. I want to say somebody, whether it was Jeff Lageman or Tony Bazzelli, somebody on the radio had implied that the injury was, more serious than, people, were really assuming. Mm-hmm. So I was curious about, okay, is he going to be available for the start of training camp? Because you also have, as other people asked, Ben Barch and Josh Wells also facing injury. That's a lot of injury questions for, you're top, like your starters and your top depth offensive linemen.
Yep.
And what was the exact wording that he said? Like I asked him is Cam with his recovery going to be available for the start of training camp?
And he said physically, yes.
No, he said from a health standpoint, right?
From a health standpoint, yes.
Yeah. And I don't know what other standpoint there would be. I did ask around because, maybe it was just, a slip of the tongue and he just, said something awkwardly, but I feel like he's normally pretty deliberate with, what he says.
Yeah.
I mean, I did ask around, okay, it's a potential trade, is this them saying, okay, Walker Little's our left tackle? And I was told absolutely not on, a trade, but I don't know, just the wording of it from a GM who in my time covering him doesn't have many slip ups like that. Like if he says something, it's, it's normally the truth. He's probably not telling you a lot, but what he is telling you, it's probably straight up. And it was just interesting to me. So again, maybe offensive lineman in the first, I mean, that doesn't have to mean tackle, but if Cam Robinson is facing questions, if Ben Barch is facing questions, if Josh Wells, I know he said he's healthy, but he's still coming off an injury. I mean, that's a lot of dudes injured, man.
Yeah. And then, I don't know. Did Shalley get hurt at any point last year?
No, he's a tank, man. He's a unit. Did he get hurt?
Shalley, at least.
Did he get hurt? Come on.
All right. Well, those are my 2 big nuggets. What else did you come away with from the presser?
They both basically said they didn't think tight end was a need at all. Was that your interpretation of it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember both of them saying it, but I definitely remember, I think, Balky saying, someone was like, we don't really think we need to worry about it too much.
Yeah.
Stress about it.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Balky was asked how much growth is needed in the tight end room. He said, we're going to look to build that room and get as strong as we can. We don't feel it's an absolute necessity to add to that room, but there's an opportunity to add to it. We will.
Yeah.
And then Doug was asked about the tight end position later, and he talked about wanting to make it strong and stuff, but then he said, we still feel like Evan, Luke Farrell, and Garrett Prince right now, the 3 we have, we know we're bringing guys who can't and will compete there, but that's a strong room. Yeah, there's 2 young players there, but we got a lot of high expectations for those players as well, and they know that. So, I mean, of course, they could go ahead and take Darnell Washington at, 24, Michael Mayer, and make us look stupid for even, talking about this. But, I mean, when it comes, Balky saying, they have their needs and people can think about what their needs are, and he's basically saying, people might think we have certain needs, but they're wrong. Tight end could be one of those to me where, they see everybody thinking tight end is a big need for them, and some people mocking them one in the first round, where internally they're like, no, we have our starter in Evan Ingram. And I told you, man, they like Luke Farrell.
Yeah, you did. I was going to say that. You've written about it too. So, I mean, I think it's kind of clear in their preparation for the draft too that you can research just because they had quote unquote significant interest in Kincaid, if that's how you say his name.
Kincaid, I think.
Kincaid. I knew I was saying it wrong.
Kincaid.
Hey, whoa. Dalton Kincaid. But it wasn't like an official meeting or top 30 visit or anything
To
like
my
that.
knowledge, it wasn't a top 30 visit. It was a weird tweet by Schefter.
Yeah.
It was weird.
All of Jacksonville's official like visits and meetings and everything like that, though, with tight ends has been like middle rounds.
I got a good Schefter joke real quick.
Okay.
The tight end I never met.
That's pretty good.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's good.
Sorry. I had to let that one fly. I had to let that one fly.
Oh man, you lost me.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, I had to cough it out. Oh man. So, yeah, I would be like surprised. As fun as the idea of Washington or Mayer is, because they're both really good. I'd be surprised if Mayer gets to 24 at all. As good as they are, like it's probably not gonna happen.
And like I just don't know. Like this is a team that even though obviously Doug Peterson, everybody says tight end. Zach Ertz, he didn't draft Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz was a second round pick. Dallas Goedert was a second round pick. You know, they've already paid Evan Ingram. I feel like paying a veteran is about as far as this regime probably wants to go as when it comes to investing. Like if you look at Trent Baalke's draft history, like he has not like he's drafted Vance McDonald high. And other than that, that's it. Like he learned from that mistake. who else? Who am I missing?
I don't know. They double dipped at linebacker last year. Why not double dip at tight end? Is tight end not the linebacker of the offense?
It is the linebacker of the offense.
So there you go.
Yeah, they've only. I think I was reading the Jaguars provided us like with a bunch of draft stats like of their franchise and stuff, and they've only drafted like 8 tight ends in franchise history.
And didn't you have them taking 2 tight ends though in your like last 7-round thing, mock?
That was pre. We adapt with our information, guys. Yeah. We adapt with our information. Okay.
Old news. My bad.
Here we go. The Baalke. They provided us with the Baalke breakdown, like a list of all of Baalke's draft picks. He's drafted 76 total players. What's the conference he's most drafted from?
SEC.
Yep, 20 of his 76 picks. Okay. What's his most drafted position group?
Defensive end / edge.
Yeah. And from what I can see, he's drafted like there's Vance McDonald. Corey Anderson was a second round pick. He drafted Blake Bell. Okay, Jesus. Okay, he's drafted 4 tight ends. He's drafted 4 tight ends, and one of them was Luke Farrell. And he's been a part of like 9 drafts as the GM. He just does not draft a position.
John, they're not going to draft a tight end, and then the offseason is going to get super slow in like 2 months, and then I'm going to go back and watch Luke Farrell film from 2022.
Here we go. They've drafted 107 players on offense in franchise history. Only 9 have been tight ends.
Oh, man. What do you think of Will Mallory? He just had a local visit with him. I've seen like recent hype about him on the timeline.
I try to avoid University of Miami offense. I watched Tyreek Stevenson. That's about as close. I straight up have not seen Will Mallory. I'll be honest. If he gets drafted, I'll watch him. But he's in my after last year, after they got past Chad Muma, I was running blind. I was like, okay, Snoop Connor, that's a dude. So I'll put Will Mallory in the Snoop Connor category for me this year. I got none for you.
Yeah, I'm not gonna watch film on him or anything. I'll just like know the names. But if there's like no names that they haven't shown interest in, then I'm gonna be in the same boat as you.
There would be a name if they draft him. I've at least seen his name before,
right?
Which probably didn't happen with their last like 3 picks last year.
Yeah. Oh man, if only I didn't know about Gregory Jr.
Oh yeah, I forgot you were.
People don't have high expectations for this 6th rounder. Brought to you by Gus. That'll be my bit. What other nuggets do you have, John? 3, I think.
He mentioned 5 quarterbacks being in the mix to go high, which obviously that's Hendon Hooker along with Bryce Young, who's going 1, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis. I mean, the way he worded it, he kind of made it seem like he thinks there's a chance Hooker could go before 24. Like, am I wrong in that? Am I reaching?
No, I like as you said earlier, he says everything not necessarily for a reason, but like he's careful with what he says, and so I think he would have stopped himself at 4 if he thought it was only going to be 4.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Hooker going somewhere in the first 23 picks would be like an absolute like boon for them.
That's true.
Like it would be best case scenario. Like, okay, let's see here.
I mean, something weird is going to happen. Like a Jalen Hyatt is going to go like 12 or something like that.
Oh, Jesus. And see, he says, when you don't need a quarterback, and then there's 4 or 5 of them in the draft that people are coveting, you know at least 5 guys are going to go up in there. It's going to push everybody back down, and you hope there's other positions that aren't real need at yours that are heavy at the top end too, because they'll continue to push guys down.
Like
so basically, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, like a safety guard. That's all I was going to say.
Yeah. I mean, is Hooker going to be a Viking, I guess?
That's what I was thinking. That's got to be it. Unless, like, the Patriots at 15 taking
That'd be funny.
This seems like they're a little bit sick of Mac, even though those rumors are probably
I'm sick of Mac. I'm sick of Mac. Dude. Mac Jones is just—he's one of my least favorite personalities in the NFL, and I get it. He's from Jacksonville. I'm
the Grayson Allen of football.
Yeah, dude. I'm saying.
Yeah.
What's likable there? I'm with Bill on this one. Bring Tom. Tom knew his place, and when he didn't know his place, he took it up with his supermodel wife. And Max over here beefing with Matt Patricia.
Which went better?
Which I agree that Bill did screw Mac over last year. That was a completely asinine idea on offense, but nonetheless, yeah. Quarterback's going to go. Like definitely 4 quarterbacks are going to go. Right now, I think Levis is going to go number 2. I think that D'Amico and the super creepy Texans GM who are going to want to pick Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson, but ownership's going to be like, okay, you got to pick a QB, and the GM's always going to save his ass, you know. So I think they're going to go QB. Obviously, Bryce Young's off the board. They must not like Anthony Richardson, like Cesario, whatever the hell his name is. Put something out the other day where he was like, we had one quarterback in, and he was trashing how he had multiple position coaches in multiple years, and he was trashing his coach, and we don't want that kind of guy. And it was obviously Anthony Richardson that he was talking about.
For the record, Team Richardson over here.
Yeah. No, I mean, if Anthony Richardson tells me Billy Napier sucks, I'm gonna take his word for it. You know, like I'm not. Wow. He was like, so is it somebody else's fault or is it your fault? And in my head, I'm like, it's somebody else's fault, dude.
It was someone else's fault.
So the Texans aren't going to take Anthony Richardson. That's not happening. It doesn't seem like anybody has at all plugged in has said that they're high on C.J. Stroud, and I think C.J. Stroud has the same agent Deshaun Watson did. So
yeah, because there was like rumors of them trying to trade up to 1 during the Panthers trade up.
Yeah,
so I think you're right. I think they're like, we definitely want Young over anyone else by a while.
So
Stroud and Richardson.
So I think they're going to want a pass rusher, but I think they're going to take Levis, and I think the Colts are going to get Stroud.
They could get Nolan Smith.
I hadn't taken Bijan.
Really?
Yeah.
Ooh,
Damian Pierce is not going to stop a single team from doing anything.
I'm excited to see where Bijan goes. Him and like Richardson. I can't wait.
Like all these people, was it Chris Ballard said he had 17 like first round picks. Like I feel like probably 16 to 20 is probably the right range for how many first round picks teams see in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
After like the first like dozen or so picks, like Bijan's going to be like clearly like the top guy like on the board for some teams, you know, like it's going to be him and then like several other tiers and then the next guy just by the nature of this draft class.
Yeah. That's my argument for Mayer going early too is because not to the same extent as Bijan for sure, because Robinson is awesome, but like at a certain point, like the two of them are going to be like just too high up on teams' draft boards to not take over just like a B tier edge or a tackle.
Give me your guess on who Bulky said he did think there was a best talent in the draft. Give me your guess on who you think that is. Huh?
Definitely. I immediately thought Jalen Carter.
I did too. Even though, I don't know, they spent 30 minutes talking about character and how they only have 127 players on their board.
So that's
So
why he like specified talent beforehand because he was like, "Oh, I don't know about player," but he said talent. Like
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good point.
So that made me
I
think.
will say another interesting thing they did say,
Yeah.
like one of the few interesting things anybody's ever said about like culture. Doug
Yeah.
was like, if there's a talented guy who maybe doesn't fit the culture great, we'll still bring him in because like, you know, we feel like we have enough guys to corral him in. And he said that they used to do that in Philly. And
Yeah.
that to me was at least interesting that they're at least, willing to make some concessions. I mean, objectively, I mean, Calvin Ridley, I think, was a concession.
You think he was like viewed as like maybe locker room problem? Is
Not a locker room problem.
but
Not a locker room problem, but
in the locker room.
yeah, not a locker room problem, but
I mean,
bring your hard hat to work.
Really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. It's tough to judge because like Peterson and Balky just went two different ways with it. Balky seemed pretty like set on like if you got kicked out of a club in college, then I'm not drafting you.
I would love for a GM to be like, I'm not going to draft you if you've ever transferred. Just have like a strict rule on no transfers.
That's going to be like he's going to be out of the job in a couple of years with how many transfers actually happen.
I also did think it was interesting. Demetrius asked a good question, Harvey, about like the COVID years and how this could impact the draft. And with older prospects and also some younger guys being bumped down, he goes, "I don't think it impacts it at all."
And Keon White went off in my head. Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, I think Keon's going to go early, man.
Like before the Jags.
They wouldn't invite him to the draft if they didn't.
That's what I was thinking. Like that's like the biggest piece of evidence right there.
Like they purposely don't invite players sometimes because they want to avoid like a will he or won't he type, be drafted,
right.
Like a Geno situation from a few years ago. That was horrible, man.
There's 17 players invited to the draft this year to be a part of it in Kansas City and wait in the waiting room.
Chris Ballard said he had 17 first round grades. I mean, like it sounds about right.
Yeah. Do you think 127 was a nugget at all? Balky said there's 127 draftable players on his board.
I think it could mean that maybe you see them get more aggressive at certain points.
Mm-hmm. I had them. I'm working on a mock right now where I had them trading up in a second. So just to like throw in one of their late rounders.
I could see that. Yeah. I could see, like that. That was my main thought. Was like, I feel like they're confident that they're going to get a guy at 24 in terms of the culture, etc. But as it gets later in the draft, maybe there'll be questions. So yeah, maybe that. Maybe you see more day 3 trades like. They moved up for Snoop Connor,
Yeah, I was about to say, new article idea. Who's this year's Snoop Connor?
Tank Bigsby.
I mean, yeah, that would be the correct answer.
Yeah. So that was my, I guess, big takeaway from it. And that I don't know if 127 was a high or low number. I really don't.
I mean, at first it seemed super low, but then when you consider about double that is drafted, and I don't know, I feel like I saw another quote where if it's like 150, there's no way that you're not going to have people still on your board by the time the draft ends. So I don't think it was like that crazy of a number.
Yeah. And I think it was more probably fit based than talent based, right? Or is it both?
I think it's both. Like if there's a talented linebacker, then that doesn't mean he's off the board. He's just down the board. You know what I mean?
No, here it doesn't.
I don't know. I think they're going to draft a linebacker late,
dude.
Like in the 6th round, but
they're going to take that Clemson kid in the 2nd round and make everybody lose their crap.
Yeah, we got it next week. We should do like what the funniest pick would be at 24 because we talked about that a while ago. I don't know what it would be now that we've kind of gotten farther in the process.
I have a couple ideas.
We'll save it for next week.
We'll save it for next week. But for now, we're going to get a quick word from our sponsors, and then Gus and I will be right back.
All right. So the only other takeaway I had from the press conferences that occurred on Wednesday and Thursday were the Evan Engram comments. Just kind of circle back. I mean, Trevor said he's going to be ready, and Balky said that they're getting closer to an extension. Is that the right way to interpret, or
Yeah, he said they're trending in that direction.
pointing in that direction towards a contract extension for Engram? So there's not really any news in this news report, but it still seems likely that Engram will be around for the long run, even if it's not happened yet.
Yeah, I mean, it shows that like they obviously still want to get a deal done, which probably makes sense. Like no team ever really wants, like, unless you're a franchise tag at a running back, nobody ever really wants their player to play on a franchise tag, because you can just drive the cap down, you can manipulate it more, and they're under a long-term deal. So I do think that they obviously are still working toward that, and ideally, they want that, and that's the best case scenario for both sides. But again, like just the fact that he's like saying that's what they want to do, like it reiterates that okay, he's for at the very least, for this season, he's again going to be like a major piece.
Yeah, and I think like alarm bells would be going off a little bit, honestly, if like Mayer or Washington were drawing significant interest from the Jaguars, because then it would be like, oh, well, first of all, that's pretty cool, but second of all, maybe they're not really feeling confident about Engram. So the fact that that isn't happening is kind of sort of a sign of confidence.
Right. Like if you draft one of those guys, there's no reason to sign Ingram to a multi-year contract.
Yeah.
Like yeah, Washington and Ingram can coexist, but there's no reason to have a first round pick and a big money tight end at the same time.
How old do you think Engram is?
He's like 29, isn't he?
He's 28. But like when I looked at that, or I was just looking him up the other day for something else, and I was 28.
What draft was he? Was he 16, 17?
I want to say 16.
17, 18, 19, 20. He might have been 8. No, he was 17 because he got the 5th-year option. Yeah, he was 17. So let him for net draft.
Best draft ever. I was talking to the same person about that.
He's not like old enough to the point where it concern you for like a couple-year contract. I'm just wondering if it's you obviously have Calvin Ridley coming up. You'll have Trevor Lawrence coming up. You'll have Tyson Campbell coming up. You'll have Walker Little coming up. You have Andre Cisco. Like you have a lot of guys coming up that you're gonna have to pay. I guess my question is like, how much is paying a tight end worth it when, if you, play your cards right, he's at best, your third best passing option. And I feel like that's, you can find a number 3 somewhere else for, I watched Moneyball the other day, and you can find 3 guys and get on base for cheaper.
No, that's actually a really good point because I hadn't really thought about that. How just the presence of Ridley is going to make everyone's jobs easier, and so, but it also means that there just won't really be as high of expectations or a need for Engram because, as you said, he'll be at best third in the pecking order behind Ridley and Kirk. So, with 2 better guys in front of you, like you could stand to not have a great tight end.
I do think the Ingram question goes beyond like the field and like what he brings to the locker room, just how much he's respected inside the building. I do think that's an aspect of it, and that if your locker room sees you pay that guy, they'll know that okay, if you do things the right way with this franchise, you get rewarded, which was an issue with him in the past. They would like they pissed off so many past players who like obviously it's probably worked out for them since then. But Ngakoue, that was a guy, you drafted and you developed. He did everything right, was never in trouble until, he started going online. But he was like the epitome, okay, you should pay this guy. And then he sees them sign, got other free agents who really had no business, being paid, the Andrew Norwells, Dante Moncriefs. That understandably rubs some players the wrong way. So when you pay the right people, it makes an impact. And I do think paying Ingram to a degree would do that for the Jaguars.
All right. I said we talk about Budda Baker before we get out of here.
Let's do it.
What do you think? All right. Well, so first of all, the safety from the Cardinals requested a trade a week ago on April 14th. And he's looking for a contract extension or just a new contract that would make him the highest paid player at his position So Derwin is currently being paid $19 annually. So, John, how much do you think it would cost, first of all, to acquire Baker with the thought in mind that you have to hand him a $20 million contract annually?
Well, first of all, I want to say you did a good job with your rap sheet impersonation.
Hey, you're going to make me stand up, prove I'm not in a box?
I saw him at the combine, and it's the
Dude.
Harrison Ford from the new Star Wars trilogy when he's like, "It's true, all of it." That's
dude. Saw him at the Senior Bowl a year ago. Oh my gosh, dude! I haven't been like so stunned to see a celebrity like maybe ever. I mean, calling him a celebrity is a lot, but
how many celebrities have you seen?
he's not tall. I was just thinking about Jack Black because I just saw Mario. I was like in LA visiting an aunt or something when I was a kid, and my sister and I got an autograph from him in like a toy store. So that was pretty sweet.
How is Jack Black doing in a toy store?
I don't know, buying something for the kid he probably has.
I don't know. It's a little weird.
But he was really nice. So
yeah.
He did a whole song and everything in front of us.
Yeah, you guys did a whole School of Rock, rendition.
He taught me life lessons.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. So, yeah, that's two celebrities that I've seen / met right there.
There you go. Jack Black and Ian Rappaport. Well.
Anyway, Budda Baker. You think second rounder, third rounder, fourth rounder?
I feel like in today's NFL where Jalen Ramsey just went for a third rounder. I don't from the conversations I've had, I think you could get Budda for a third rounder. Albert Breer said you could get him for a second or third. I really think the Cardinals are in like such like we don't care about this year, tear down mode. Our owner is in a living hell every day.
Yeah.
Like let's try to get some money off the books. I think you could get Budda for a third rounder from them.
Yeah, I would like the recent big safety trades are Minkah Fitzpatrick for a first, and did Jamal Adams go for 2 first rounders? Or
that's wild.
First rounders. I think it was just those two, but those two also happened a couple years ago, and they were younger guys who were, I think, still on their rookie, maybe not on their rookie contracts, but they were younger than Budda is right now, which is 27. And as you said, like the NFL is just kind of different now with Gilmore and Ramsey both going for a third. Then I agree. I think third is a good price tag.
Like he's probably similar to the Jamal Adams situation because Adams requested a trade because he wanted to be made the highest paid safety, and it seems like that's Budda's same thing. But I don't know. For Budda Baker, I feel like is a better safety now than Jamal Adams was, even when people still thought he was good. But the NFL has always had a weird thing for Jamal Adams. I mean, he went top 10 despite never really being that good at LSU.
That's true. And then who's the safety that Jonathan Abram? I feel like got drafted in the first round because of him. Because it was like, this is Jamal Adams, and it's like, well,
yeah, from Jonathan Abram from Mississippi State, he like injured more of his own teammates on tackle attempts than he did anything else. But
yeah, it seemed like he was a kid out of Friday Night Lights or something.
I personally can't believe how many people have seemed against the idea of adding Budda Baker. Like to me, he's a blue chip safety talent. Like, is that taking it to like? I think he's a top 5 safety in the NFL.
Yeah, I think he's like at the bottom of the top 5 safety list, so still a blue chip safety.
And he's
like, people rave about his like leadership and in the locker room kind of stuff.
And he's 27, 28?
27 right now.
He could easily fill the slot need, but he'd be so much more than a nickel corner. He can be whatever you want him to be. He can be the matchup guy. He can help you with like when other teams have like a unicorn on offense, like Travis Kelce or whatever. The Jaguars don't have an answer, right now. Like Tyson Campbell, he's a great cornerback. He's an outside, like he'll take on your starting X receiver and put him in a half Nelson. That's no question. But like these move guys who play more inside, the Jaguars don't have an answer right now. Like
they haven't had an answer for years either.
Like Devin Lloyd's not that answer until he gets a lot better. So Budda Baker would be that answer.
Right. And as you said, he can play all over the place from free safety to manning people up in the slot to being a plus blitzer and being able to help out confuse opposing formations and stuff.
You could play him and Rayshon Jenkins and Andre Cisco together on the field easily.
Easily, yeah. And Todd Bowles did a decent amount of that, or does a decent amount of that in Tampa Bay, which is where Jags defensive coordinator Mike Caldwell kind of learned his ropes as a guard, at least.
Well, like you said, he's a really good blitzer from the slot. That's one of the things, like the Jaguars, the nickel position with this regime, like they value the most. Like they want like a slot who can make, disruptive plays in the backfield.
So adding Baker as opposed to Branch would obviously be a bigger short-term plus, but in the long term, like if you had a choice, would you rather draft Branch in the first or trade the third rounder for Buda Baker and then give him that big contract?
And so then you can take another player, so just say for this argument's sake, you could take Torrance in the first instead.
Right. But then since it's long term, like you don't really have money to pay X and Y players when they hit free agency or players in free agency pools.
I don't know if Brian Branch will ever be as good as Buda Baker is right now. And I think Brian Branch is awesome.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, they're like the absolute best case for Brian Branch is that he's somewhere close to Buda Baker,
Yeah, I say pay the man.
Yeah, the Chiefs just paid Jawan Taylor however much money, and I'm not going to act like I understand their cap situation, but they've had like 3 Hall of Fame players like on big money contracts the last couple of years, and they're still making it work. Like, figure it out. Yeah, exactly, dude.
The future.
Figure it out. They could have paid Tyreek Hill if they wanted to, and they already. Chris Jones is getting paid. Kelsey's getting paid. Mahomes is getting paid.
Is also getting paid?
Sure.
Contract.
How much too many is? Don't prove me wrong.
I'm sorry. I thought because
Travis Kelce isn't living meagerly.
No, he's not. But he's getting paid like $15 a year, which is just underpaid for him. But
he's Oliver Twist. You're right.
All right. So, removing Branch from the hypothetical, do you think it makes sense to trade a third rounder and pay him $20 million, or is the cost a little bit too steep? Despite the like incredible fit in locker room's presence, because it's the perfect player to add, honestly.
I mean, I would do it. They needed to take swings to try to get past Kansas City. Like you need to add that top tier talent to get past the Chiefs. Like Calvin Ridley was one obviously a good step in that direction, but do it so basically if you added Buda, you'd have last year's team minus Jawan Taylor and Arden Key, but plus Buda Baker and Calvin Ridley. I mean that's a good team, man.
Yeah, it's a good team, but is it like Chiefs, Bills, Ravens holding on to my take for dear life?
I think it's I don't think it's Chiefs yet because nobody's the Chiefs, but I'd argue it's up there with the Bills roster. I think the Bills roster is kind of overrated, honestly.
Yeah, that's true. They've eroded a little bit in the past 2 years.
Bills,
2 years ago, they were pretty stacked.
The Bills had their time in the sun,
and it was barely even enough for
They did nothing memorable with it whatsoever.
No.
Poor
Bills.
So I would do it personally. I've been surprised at how many people have said they wouldn't do it.
I would do it too.
I that's not me saying I think that they have any actual interest or that they want to do it or anything like that. It's just I think it would make a lot of sense for them. And I don't think Tony Jefferson, he and Buda Baker never actually played together. I know both Cardinal safeties, one would assume they did.
Mm-hmm.
I triple check to make sure they didn't because that would feel like something, right? Like Tony Jefferson and Buda Baker definitely played together. Yeah, no,
I have to check it too. But yeah, Jefferson left the year before Baker got drafted.
Yeah, so but I don't think he mentioned Jacksonville for no reason,
Yeah, I think did someone else mention Jacksonville too? Maybe I'm just misremembering, but I feel like there was someone other than Tony Jefferson with a little bit more experience breaking stuff in the NFL media world. Maybe not, though.
I'm not sure.
Well, okay.
You're living in a fantasy, Gus. Come on, Peter Pan, join the real world.
Okay.
So we'll talk about this more next week. But if the draft was today, who is the Jaguars' first round pick? Go.
Brian Branch.
Yeah, that's what I said too.
Okay, one last question about Baker. just like what do you think the timeline is? Because like the Jags have their second, third, and fourth round picks kind of sort of locked up next year because of
Yeah,
what's going to happen with Calvin Ridley.
you'd have to do it before draft.
Yeah, before or during, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So at least we can expect Baker news the next week. That's cool.
Yeah, you would 1,000,000% have to do it before the draft because, like you said, and a lot of people, might not know this. Like they can't those picks that they have tied up for Calvin Ridley next year. Like nobody knows that they have to give up a fourth, third, or second, but they can't trade any of them while it's still, up in the air and unknown. So that's a good call, Guessward.
Do you know specifically like what the incentives are for the trade? Is it performance or just time played?
I know obviously one of them was him getting reinstated, which happened. That turned it from a 6th to a 5th. Okay, let's see right here. Okay, if Ridley makes the team, this year, then the second pick will be at least a 4th rounder. Playing time milestone converts the pick into a 3rd rounder, and the Jaguars will give up a 2nd round pick if they sign a long-term deal with Ridley. And for anybody that's asked, like, oh, if they franchise tag him, do they have to give up a pick? I don't know.
I was gonna say, like, what if they sign him to an extension after next year's draft?
I don't know.
I'm gonna assume that it'll just be the 3rd rounder then. That'd be pretty tricky. Pretty sneaky.
Pretty sneaky, sis.
All right, you got anything else, or should we get out?
That's a good net. And no, I mean, this feels like one of the most like the most interesting part of this Jaguars draft process is them saying there are 2 or 3 guys they want. And that's how boring this process has been. So do you prefer this over the last 2 years?
Yeah, honestly, because I think it's a little bit more fun to have to like do some digging into who they're going to be, rather than just like you and regular being like, yeah, Trayvon's going to be the pick.
Did you like his answer on top 3 visits?
What was his answer?
He said they're
very important. I did like that.
They're priceless. They're priceless, guys.
Priceless.
I should have. I didn't go through the list to see which of the guys. Like what we've seen 25 of the names reported. They've had 30 in, but only 25 have been reported so far. I don't know how many of them were non-combine guys, but that was another good point by him. Like you bring in guys who weren't invited to the combine so you can do your own medical check.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Would you say pro days are more important though, or they're about the same?
Put them on the same.
All right. What about Tropical Bowl meetings?
Tropical Bowl meetings? There's your 1st round pick right there.
All right. No, that's going to be a 6th round linebacker.
But next year, you're going to see the angry scout vet there.
All right. John, I'm leaving so I can go to the cough drop. Looking forward to next week, though. Until then, this has been the Jaguar Report podcast. Thanks for listening.